Hello and welcome to Let Me Be Your Game Guide, a podcast that spends each episode delving into a mystical new video game, exploring its charms and challenges, and helping you decide if it should be next on your list. I'm your host, Emma.
And I'm Shawn.
Join us for this week's rating episode as we escape reality and enter the metaphysical. For the remainder of this episode, let me be your game guide.
Welcome.
I can't tell you how lost Rylan and I felt without you here.
Somebody has to be the icebreaker, you know?
Yes, and in your absence, Rylan and I were both like, what do we say? Well, welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Yeah, welcome back.
Rylan is still healing. He's still out.
Poor guy.
Yeah, a peek behind the screen. We're actually recording this episode the same day that we recorded both our Balatro episodes.
Yeah.
And then the episode for next week will be recorded today. So it feels like a very long absence to you guys. But really it was just one recording session that Rylan was not able to make it to. So
yeah.
Hopefully he's able to get his leg feeling a little bit better. Just take some time to relax because I know he's in a little bit of pain. And then he'll be back.
Yeah.
For our next episode or our next game.
Yeah.
Not our next episode, but our next game.
Children of Morta.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We haven't announced it, but yeah.
Usually you get that info next week.
Yeah.
But whatever, you can have it early. Really, if you watched any of our trailer reactions, you would know that that's the game after this one. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but we're still missing Rylan. We're still staring at his empty seat.
It's weird.
It is weird.
Yeah.
But I am at least blessed with Shawn, who is our icebreaker.
I'm back.
And I don't have to awkwardly sit here and think of a way to introduce the podcast. He just gets it going.
Somebody's got to do it. So.
Yes. So today we're talking about Two Falls.
Two Falls.
It's actually Two Falls Nishu Takuatshina.
Nice. I could not pronounce that.
Here's the deal. This game is based... I'm getting so ahead of myself, but I want to talk about the language that this game has. Not in it, but like the names of the chapters. Mm-hmm. I could not find any online resources with help as to how to pronounce these words.
Oh.
I think it just kind of goes to show how little information there is about indigenous languages and tribes. And this game was actually made with a lot of that in mind. So I was really excited because I felt like there was a lot that I had to learn. And this game did a great job. So we'll get into it. But before we get into it, let me just plug the podcast real quick. Don't forget to give the podcast a follow, rate it, review it, however you want to show us love. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/letmebeyourgg, where you can view episodes early as they post sometime on Sunday, which is a couple days before the episode posts everywhere else, and that's for free. Just join our Patreon for free and you'll get those episodes early.
Yeah, please do. We love seeing new people join, so.
Yeah, it's very exciting. You can find us on most socials as Let Me Be Your GG with no spaces. That's LetMeBeyourGG, no spaces. We're on Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And you can find us on TikTok as Let Me Be Your Game Guide with no spaces. You can also email us at letmebeyourgg@gmail.com. This is the best way to send in game requests. Just make sure that you put game request in the subject line so it's easy for us to find. Mm-hmm. We love it.
Yeah, it's great. We've gotten a lot of community engagement and it's been super exciting. So
yeah.
yes, please do keep sending them in, keep sending in the requests, keep, liking and subscribing. And it's been awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our YouTube is a fun little place to be right now because I just finished streaming. Of course, this is going to post so much later.
Sure, yeah.
I did a playthrough of Pitfall: The Lost Expedition. I didn't beat the game, actually, because the final boss is an asshole.
Oh.
I just have a final boss, and I had to take a break. So Ryland's taking over. He's doing those Saturday morning streams. He's going to be playing some demos.
Oh, cool.
And then if you miss our streams, because maybe Saturday morning's a little too early, they get posted on YouTube right afterwards. So pop over to our YouTube. You can catch up on any of our trailer reactions. You can listen to our podcast there. It's just audio. But then our streams are also over there. So
yeah,
it's fun.
Check it out.
It's a fun place to be.
Yeah.
But let's get into Two Falls. This game was developed by Unreliable Narrators and published by Unreliable Narrators and Indie Asylum. It's available on PC, Mac, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S. It was originally released November 8th, 2024. And you can get this for $19.99 when it is not on sale. I want to talk about the developers a little bit. So the original story was written by Isabelle Picard. And there was a lot of collaboration with Innu institutions and their elders to make sure that the scripts, scenes, and characters' reactions reflected and represented Innu culture accurately. So I thought that was really cool that, we're actually getting not only a game to play and an interesting story to follow, but an accurate depiction of this culture that not very many people are educated on. It's just not, our history books are very whitewashed. And so this was something I was really excited to learn about because I think it's, this is these cultures were here before we were here. And it's just stories that never got to be told. At least not in a widespread manner. So I just was really excited to kind of learn about this. And so Isabelle Picard was the original story writer, but I'm going to list 3 more people that were linked on the website. Isabelle is Wendat. We have Alexis Gross-Louise, who did 3D art, who's also Wendat. Anne-Marie Gross-Louise was one of the musicians who's Wendat. And then Tara Miller, the art director, she is Maliseet. I really hope that I said that right. Again, these are different tribes, different peoples, and I worked really hard to try and get proper pronunciation, but again, those resources just aren't readily available online, or maybe I'm just not looking in the right places. So if I mispronounced anything, I really apologize. I'm doing my best because I really loved all of the heart and the work that went into this game.
Yeah. And hearing that, like when I first started the game, I thought, oh, this is just a story game. Like, this is just going to be fun. But by the end, I really realized, like, oh, no, this is a real story. Like, this is a story about people and real events, it felt like, that were happening. Like, so to hear that the Innu people were involved in that is just super exciting, to give them a voice and a platform to share their culture in a way that more people can see.
Yep, absolutely. If you go, and I'll link this in the show notes, just to the Two Falls, to their webpage. They actually have a blog where they talk a lot about like the creation of the game. You can learn a lot about like just the background and history. They actually go through a lot of the original titles for the game. It wasn't originally going to be called Two Falls. And I'll just add a little tidbit. I'm not going to spoil. It was like a 4-part blog series about the title of this game.
Oh, cool.
The game was originally going to be called Kanata, the believed root for the name Canada. And it's alleged that 2 indigenous people said they were going to Kanata, meaning they were going to their village. But this led him to refer to the whole landmass as Canada.
Interesting.
So that was, and this is literally just like a tiniest little tidbit out of one of the many blog posts about the creation of this game and kind of the history of Canada and the Indigenous people that were there. And it was just so interesting. And I hope that my verbiage might be off. I might not be referring to people in the correct way. I don't know. I overthink it a little bit. But I just thought it was so interesting.
Yeah.
And then there is I wouldn't say that this is a spoiler. It is the very last thing that you see in the game, but I want to read it out at the beginning because I think it's really important to hear.
Yeah.
Throughout history, Indigenous nations across Canada have been subjected to countless colonial abuses and cultural genocide from European outsiders. The ripples of these atrocities can still be felt today. However, hopes to achieve true reconciliation persists, with activists enacting meaningful change upon our world. This project was made possible thanks to the collaboration between Indigenous voices and creators from outside cultures. We hope it will encourage others to cooperate, communicate, and expand their knowledge in the same way.
So cool.
So cool.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah. So I just immediately I was so drawn to this game. And I love story games, and it really felt a little bit Firewatchy the way that you interact with the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the accessibility report, unfortunately, I could not find one, so you're stuck with me.
Hey, you do a great job.
I've done my best, but there are some disclaimers in there, things that I'm not educated enough on to confidently say. So it's a best effort, and that's linked in the show notes. It's also on our Patreon if you want to go take a look. Before we get into our game rating, I'll just give us a spoiler-free game description. You know, we've talked about it a lot already.
Yeah.
But Two Falls, Nishu Takuatshina is a story-driven game that takes place in the 17th century Canadian wilderness. Follow the stories of Jeanne, a shipwrecked Frenchwoman, and Maikan, a young Innu hunter, as their paths intertwine in this mysterious adventure.
Yeah. It's a story, though. It's great.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to get way into it during our next episode. Mm-hmm. But today we're just going to rate the game. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to be more critical about it. We take into account general considerations such as length, challenge rating, and replayability. We also consider story and narrative topics, including plot, characters and world building, presentation topics, including graphics and sound design and music, gameplay topics, including content variety and mechanics, and lastly, we consider the overall value of the game. Mm-hmm. Let's get into it.
I'm here.
So for general considerations, length. I know your length on your Steam is a little wonky.
Yeah, I just checked and it said 177 hours. I'm like, yeah, that's probably not right. I think it was between 4 and 5 hours is how long it took me. So
yeah, so mine was 4.7 hours. I will say a good chunk of this time may have been me pausing to look at the menu as you learn about the flora and fauna and people. Something I loved about this game is they included actual historical facts about the plant life, the animals, the customs, even about Jeanne who's coming from France, why she's coming. I just found it so interesting.
Yeah, they even talk about some of the side characters and just a lot of different things that they describe, which just allows you to delve deeper into that world and what that felt like. So
yeah. Especially because it's real. The story itself is fictional, but it's based off real events.
Yeah.
So moving on to challenge rating, I think it's fair to say, our challenge rating. Let me get you the scale before I get into it. I'm getting too excited. Our scale starts at beginner, escalates to easy, then moderate, difficult, and it tops out at expert. I got ahead of myself a little bit, but what I was going to say is that I think it's beginner.
Yeah, it's definitely a beginner game. Through the story, that there's interactions that you have while communicating with other characters that you have to just make a decision on. Either you're going to choose to talk about it in this type of way or that type of way. But outside of that, it's essentially point and click. You interact with some stuff, walk around, but it's story driven.
Yeah, it's a walking sim for the most part. So very easy. Mm-hmm. Your grandma could pick this up and figure it out.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So
yeah. Target audience. Who do you think would like this game?
Well, obviously, if you're into story-driven games, this is a great story.
Yeah.
But really, I think anyone can pick this up because it's a great learning experience of just like tribal history or culture. So I think anybody could pick it up and you would learn something from it. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. People who are into games like Firewatch, go back to listen to our 4th episode if you wanted to hear about that.
Hear how much we grow Firewatch.
Yeah, we tore it apart, which I don't plan on doing for this game.
No.
Really anyone who's maybe a history buff that wants to get into some Canadian history, learn about maybe an indigenous peoples that whose stories haven't really been told.
Yeah, for sure.
I usually talk about ESRB ratings here. I couldn't find one.
Oh, interesting.
Don't know. I even went to like the ESRB rating website and I couldn't find it. I don't know. It was late. It was late, and maybe I was just being silly. I have no idea. But the way that the game plays out, I would maybe put it at T for teen.
Yeah, if I were to give an ESRB rating, I would probably do a T for teen. There is some like violence and some adult content, i.e. like they're in a section they're drinking and that kind of thing. There is some minor fighting and that kind of stuff that you see. So yeah, T for teen I think is a good choice. And plus a lot of the topics that they're discussing are a little bit more adult focused. So
yeah, but definitely don't, figure it out for yourself because we're not. I don't know what the basis of those ratings are, but I guess that's a guess.
Yeah, we're not professionals. We're definitely not putting the rating on that game, so just take it as you may. Maybe you play it first, then you decide who else could play it.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of playing the game, is it replayable?
I think for me, I'll probably set it down for a little bit. I'll probably set it down for a little while, but I am excited because with the choices that you pick in the game, you also have the other side. So if I were to replay this again, I would probably pick the other options that I didn't pick before and just see what happens. Yeah. Because your story will change based on what you pick. Yeah,
I couldn't tell if the actual, if your story itself would change by the choices. Because when you make choices, it kind of says, you'd make a decision and this isn't really a spoiler, but it would be like, Jeanne's religion is becoming more dogmatic.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really know how that was affecting the storyline, but I'd be really curious to see if I played it differently, if it affected it at all.
Yeah, I'll talk about that more next week because there's definitely some times where I saw. Yeah, we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week. Yeah, but interesting for sure. I don't think I'll replay this for a very long time. I wouldn't say it's traditionally a replayable game.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty normal for story games like this. You interact with this story and then it's got to be a while before you play through it again. So not a replayable game, but it doesn't mean people won't replay it. And I think it's a very interesting story.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, but I would agree. Yeah, I'll do the same thing. I'll probably set it down for a while. And if I want to replay it again, I could. So
yeah. Well, speaking of the story, I'm just finding so many ways to roll into our next section.
You're on a roll.
Let's get into the numbered rating of our. Let's get into the numbered rating section of our little template here.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we rate things from 1 to 5. 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And we're gonna start with plot.
What was your thought on the plot?
My thought on the plot. I liked it. It was different. I really, really liked that you were playing as two different characters. Mm-hmm. And so you had this plot that was intertwining with each other throughout the game in ways that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
There were parts that I was like, oh, okay, I know where this is going. And then all of a sudden it kind of took a turn and I was like, oh, okay, that's not who I thought was going to end up. I'm not going to say anymore.
Sure.
But there were things that I didn't expect to happen. And also there's a mystery kind of throughout the whole game, multiple mysteries that you're not really sure how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's definitely yes, a couple different main storylines that are kind of running all at the same time. But yeah, when you're jumping back and forth, then you kind of get aspects of each, and very good. Yeah. Very good.
I gave it a 4.
That's where I was leaning to.
Yeah.
The story is quite compelling. This plot is. They really build it out very well. And it's engaging. Like you really feel like you're in it and you're doing the thing. So yeah. Very good.
Yep. And characters, I thought this tied in very closely with the plot, mostly because the plot-driven mysteries, a lot of them were, I felt like I was being not manipulated, but I became so attached to characters that story-wise, I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to like you.
Yeah.
They played you in a way that it made it really difficult to dislike any of the characters, just because of how human they were.
Yeah.
They were given a lot of personality and a lot of backstory without actually getting backstory.
Yeah, you got a lot out of a little real quick. Yeah. And so you could kind of base what you wanted to do on that. But I would agree, there's definitely been moments where I'm like, are we friends? I don't know. Like,
yeah, it was very bizarre. So I also give characters a 4.
I would give characters a 4 as well. There was a lot of memorable moments, and the characters really stood out. So,
yeah. Well, and lastly, in the story and narrative section, let's talk about world building. What did you think about the world?
The world was good. They don't really talk about it too much, though, and they don't expand too much. They talk about it a little bit, but it's not like it's in depth. There's no map to speak of, so you can't see like the vastness of where you're at. You just kind of are going through the world. So I would probably say a 3, maybe a 3.5. It was immersive and I enjoyed the time that I had, but yeah, they talked a little bit about the outside and some local towns and things, but this is also the 1700s.
Yeah.
There's not a lot out in Canada, so.
Well, I found it to be pretty crazy when you would do these large time jumps.
Yeah.
Because you start in one area and both your characters are kind of making this journey to another area and you're going like seasons. It's taking you weeks and weeks and months to get where you want to go. And it just highlights back in the 17th century.
Yeah.
How little there was. I mean, there was so much nature and space in between civilizations. And it was just, it was a strange thing to experience. I gave it a 4 because I really enjoyed all of the historical facts you got. I felt like even though you didn't get a lot about the world map-wise, you got so much background on the people and the animals and the customs. I've kind of gone into that already, but there's so much to learn that's actual historical fact.
Yeah.
It just added a lot to the world, especially because this world is real.
Yeah.
It was real.
Yeah.
Like it existed at one point.
That's true. Yeah, that's a very good point. So 4 for you.
4 for me.
Okay.
But let's move into presentation. We're going to talk about graphics and sound design and music, starting with graphics.
Okay. So for graphics, I would say the graphics were between a 3 and a 4 for me. I'm a little nitpicky. So there was definitely moments in this game. Lighting played a factor.
Yeah.
Lighting played a big factor, especially in certain moments where it was a little bit more serious. and it was great. Like when you're looking at a character and they're going through maybe a conversation with you or something, it looked really good. There was moments where I looked around in the environment and I'm like, yeah, the trees kind of look a little choppy. The grass is a little not cleaned up. Like, so in the environment, it didn't look as sharp, but the characters looked pretty good in my mind.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Graphics were lacking for me.
Yeah.
I really liked this game. I gave the graphics a 3, and I think that was being generous.
Yeah. I
think I was being generous giving it a 3. No matter how many different settings that I changed, I was getting a lot of screen tearing.
Oh.
The environment, again, there were times where all of a sudden, like, the lighting was weird.
Yeah.
And I felt like the way that the characters graphically looked clashed a little bit with how detailed and realistic they tried to make the atmosphere look.
Yeah.
It didn't ruin it for me, but this is definitely the lowest point of the game.
I would agree. It reminded me of like if they just put a new story but used the same engine as Firewatch.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like I got that same feel where it's like this kind of looks the same as that, but a different story.
Yeah, and even Firewatch, it had more of a cartoony environment. Like it was very beautiful to look at, but the environment itself matched the cartooniness of the character.
Yeah.
Even though you only saw like his legs and hands.
The shortest legs, yeah.
So I hate to ding this game because I just thought it was they just put so much heart into it, but to be honest and to be critical, I think it really lacked. And even I feel like I should probably give it a 2.
It's up to you. It's your vote. Yeah,
I'm gonna give it a 2. I have to be honest. It's hard to be critical on these games, especially after doing so much research on the developers and the work that they put into it. Yeah. So it's a 2 for me.
Yeah, probably 2.5 or 3-ish. 2.5. Yeah. I appreciate the characters, but I do agree, like they definitely clash with the environment. And just like there was moments where the environment looked really good where they like pointed out, but then you'd be walking around and you're like, God, this doesn't look amazing. Like so I wish they would have spent a little bit more time and cleaned it up and polished it a little bit more. Would have done so much better. So
well, sound design and music does turn it on its head for me because I freaking loved the music in this game.
Yeah, there was definitely a few times where I was just sitting there and I was just listening and I'm like, this is awesome.
Yes.
Like so good. And not really a spoiler, but at the end they have like it's like a chanting song that they play while the credits are playing. And I listened to that the entire thing. I'm like, this is awesome. It's so cool. So
yes. And I think this was another time that they partnered and made sure that they were working with indigenous communities or making sure that what did I say? I may have noted the actual institution.
Innu Institute?
No, I didn't write it down. In their blog, they talk about the specific institute. But yeah, the Innu institutions they worked with, and I believe the musician that did a lot of this music was Wendat or indigenous and made the music that plays just when you start up the game. Like it's so good.
It's so good. So good.
And so eerie at times. Like there were times where I was scared. I was playing the game a couple days ago when we were having like power surges because the wind was so bad.
Yeah.
And I ended up having to stop because I was scared that the power was going to go out and I don't have a good surge protector for my computer. So I was like, we're turning this off and I'm unplugging my desktop.
Yeah.
But I was at a very scary part in the game and like the music was playing. It's really windy outside.
Yeah.
It sounds like trees are falling down. I was like, oh my God, this is scary. I'm scared. So I gave sound design and music a 5.
I would agree. Yeah.
They even had like spatial sounds. I was wearing headphones, and depending on where a character was, I could hear in my headphones which direction they were.
Yeah.
It was just very well done.
Yeah, and even just the environment, although you walking, you can hear stuff wrestling in the bushes. Like, there's so much sound effect design too that was awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very good.
Yeah. Well, moving into our last section, the gameplay section, we're going to talk about content variety and mechanics. Let's start with content variety.
In content variety for a story-driven game, I mean, I think it was pretty good. It's not repetitive because obviously you're driving through the story. So, I would say 3. I don't know.
Yeah,
like, it's hard to say with a story-driven game. So.
Yeah, I also gave it a 3. I think it's hard with story-driven games to have a lot of content, especially ones that are walking sims where even though you're making choices, you're really not doing a lot.
Yeah.
I did appreciate playing as 2 different characters because it mixed up the storyline and kind of what you were doing, but not enough to make it any more than a 3. I don't think it's bad, but that's just the nature of these games.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and then mechanics.
I would also say 3. I did not have too many issues. I definitely did get lost a few moments. So I definitely walked down a wrong path once, like in Firewatch.
Oh, no.
And then I had to walk all the way back. But outside of that, everything ran smoothly for me. I wouldn't say that you need a lot for a story-driven game. So I think a 3 is okay. But yeah, everything worked pretty well for me. So.
Yeah. I also gave it a 3. I really wish Rylan was here because I wanted to hear what he had to say about the walking.
Oh, yeah.
Because
at least you could run.
For some of it.
Yeah.
Not always. There were times where it wouldn't even let you run. And as I was playing it, I was just like, oh, Rylan is just stewing.
This is filler.
Yeah, no. Well, there were definitely purposes. I know that there was one point where you had to walk slow because of the conversation that was happening.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. There was conversation going on, but there was time where you were just walking and you just weren't allowed to run.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, please let me just get to where I need to be.
Yeah.
We're going so slow.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be so bad if the graphics were a little bit better and you're like, oh, I can see this or that. Is like, oh yeah, I'm just walking through a dense forest that's a little choppy. And it's
yeah. So I put mechanics at 3. It wasn't terrible. But there were some times where I was like, really? You're not going to let me run?
Yeah.
And it was, there were times where I couldn't look all the way one way or the other because they had frozen you in a certain spot.
They wanted you to look out into the distance, but you're talking with somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, which I still do like being able to look all the way around, but that's a little nitpicky.
Sure.
So, well, after all of this, let's talk about value. This is a $20 game.
Yes.
$19.99.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth $20?
The story is very good.
Mm-hmm.
I wish the graphics were better.
Mm-hmm.
The music's great. I would say catch it on a sale.
Yeah.
I would definitely say catch it on a sale. I don't know if it's worth $20 in my mind. I paid $20. I paid the full price. I missed the sale after you mentioned it. So yeah, I missed it. So I paid the full price. So as a full price payer, I think that no, I would not pay $20. If it was around the $15 or $10 range, that seems more appropriate.
Yeah.
But for a 4.5, 5-hour game, the graphics were okay, but the story was well written and done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wish it was a little bit lower.
Yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely adored the story of this game. I loved the characters, but $20 did feel a little bit steep to me just with how short the game was. It's hard when you have a 4-hour story-driven game that's $20.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of replayability. You do learn a lot. I think that there were a lot of important things that I learned. Mm-hmm. They're getting stories out there that aren't universally told, and I think that's great. Mm-hmm. So if this is something that interests you, definitely pick it up.
Yeah.
I think that it's a really important game. It was just very fun to play through, but $20.
Yeah, $20 is just a little steep.
And again, it's so hard because I've done all the research on these developers and I know how much hard work was put into it. So it's hard not to say,
they deserve that money.
Because they do. They absolutely do. But again, this episode is for thinking critically.
Yep.
No hard feelings.
Yeah. No, it was still great. It's just I would be more comfortable paying $15 or less, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, this brings us almost to the end of our episode.
Oh.
What is your final rating for this game?
My final rating with I like we've mentioned many a times, the story is awesome. It was really great. And to have the opportunity to play that game and learn more about an indigenous population is awesome. At one point I had worked for a local tribe for a while, and it was great to learn a little bit more about that. And so to have another opportunity to learn about a different, similar culture, but different in geographic location and maybe other cultural things was awesome. But it's also just a story-driven game, and the graphics I wish the graphics were better. So I would say maybe I'll go 3.6 instead of 3.5.
Do you want to know what your Firewatch rating was?
What was it?
I don't know, but do you want? That's kind of what I looked at my Firewatch rating, and that helped me land where I wanted to put this.
I think my Firewatch rating was probably 3 something.
Mine was 3.3. Let me pull yours up real quick. You have Firewatch at a flat 3.
Okay. Well, I appreciate this game much more than that one. So I will say, 3.6 seems good to me. Story was good. Just wish the graphics were cleaned up a little bit more. Sound design was awesome. So
great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I give this game a 3.3.
Okay.
It is the same as Firewatch. I think that I enjoyed both of them for different reasons. I don't think that one stood out more than the other. Firewatch was very graphically beautiful. The storyline lacked a little bit, but so I think they evened each other out. So when I was thinking of how I wanted to rate them, I think that they fall in the same place for me. So giving it a 3.3.
Yeah.
Honestly, anything above a 3 for me is playable and good.
Yeah.
And really, if this is something you're interested in, something that you want to learn more about, highly recommend playing it. It's very immersive, and you get to learn a little bit of history.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
very cool. Well, this concludes the rating episode for Two Falls, Nishu Takuatshina. I really hope I'm saying that right. I'm doing my best.
Hey, sounds good to me. You're doing better than I would.
Please join us next week for the discussion episode as we dive into the details of this game and all its hidden gems. If you haven't played the game yet and this sounds like something you may be interested in, I hope you find some time to play it before tuning in next week. Please go give the podcast a follow, 5 stars, a review if you like what you've heard. You can email us with any comments, questions, or constructive criticism at letmebeyourgg@gmail.com. You can also send us any game requests if there's something you would like us to review. Just make sure you put game request in the subject line. You can find us on most socials as Let Me Be Your GG. That's LetMeBeyourGG, no spaces. And you can find us on TikTok as Let Me Be Your Game Guide with no spaces. Our Patreon can be found at patreon.com/LetMeBeYourGG. Thank you so much for listening. We can't wait to see you next week. And thank you so much for letting me be your game guide. GG, y'all.
Bye.
Did I not put names by this? This is so dumb.